Hello everyone, welcome to Katala. Today we're looking at standard form 2, which is operations in standard form. We're basically just going to be looking at how we can add, subtract, times and divide numbers that are written in standard form. So beginning with multiplication. So without using a calculator, and that's because these questions can come up in a non-calculator exam, write the following in standard form. So we're just looking at how to multiply two numbers in standard form together. So we've got 3 times 10 to the 5 being multiplied with 2 times 10 to the 6. And the way I like to do these is just multiply the 3 with the 2, so you're just grouping up all the numbers you've got there. So 3 and 2. 3 times 2 would just be 6. And then group up all the times 10s. So you've got 10 to the 5 times 10 to the 6. Now this would become, using our knowledge of indices, and if you haven't watched the video on indices yet, I'd recommend you do that first before tackling the standard form questions. So 10 to the power of 5 times 10 to the power of 6 would be 10 to the power of, remember when you times these sorts of numbers together, you add the powers. So if the base is the same, which is 10 in this case, you times them together, you just add the powers, so 5 plus 6. And this is just going to become 6 times 10 to the power of 11. And this here is in standard form because our number at the beginning here, 6, is between 1 and 10, and so we're good to go. Next up, so part B, 5 times 10 to the 3 multiplied with 3 times 10 to the 2, so squared. Now, in exactly the same way, 5 times 3 would just be 15, and then grouping up the 10s, you've got 10 cubed times 10 squared, and that would just become 10 to the power of 3 plus 2, which is 5. Now this one we have to be a little bit careful with because this number is not currently in standard form because our number at the beginning, 15, is greater than 10. Remember the number at the beginning in standard form always has to be between 1 and 10. So what we have to do here essentially is try and make that number smaller. We need to make it get it between 1 and 10. Now a clever way in which we can do this is we can essentially take that 10 out of there, so divide the 10 out of that 15 and merge it in with the 5 10s we already have over here. So in essence what you're doing is you're dividing the 10 out of the 15. Now that would just give you 1.5, and instead of that 10 just disappearing, that merges in with the 5 10s you already have to give you 6 lots of timesing by 10. Okay, it's a really simple technique you can use there for a lot of different questions involving standard form. Part C, so 8 times 10 to the negative 8 times 5 times 10 to the negative 6. In exactly the same way, 8 times 5 is going to be 40, and 10 to the negative 8 times 10 to the positive 6 would be times 10 to the minus 8 plus 6 is minus 2. And again we've got the same scenario as last time. That number at the beginning, 40, is greater than 10, so we're going to have to divide the 10 out of there, or move the 10 out of there if you like, and merge it in with these 10s we have here. So that's going to become equal to 4. If we divide that 40 by 10 we get 4 times 10 to the power of, now we did have minus 2 there before, so if you're adding 1 10 to that, if you're merging that in, adding that on top, you would then have minus 1, because minus 2 plus 1, so merging that extra 1 in, would get you to minus 1, and that would be your final answer. That's in standard form there. Okay, by using a calculator, write the following in standard form. So we're only going to do one of these. It's a lot easier if you're actually given a calculator, so if this does come up in a calculator paper, by all means just go ahead and use your calculator and type it in as you see it. So you type this into your calculator and the result you would get is 8,025. You can see here that's what we get when we plug that into the calculator. You can double check that if you like. And since they're wanting us to give our number in standard form, we're just going to have to turn 8,025 into standard form. So we're going to have to put our decimal place here, 8.025, in order to get a number between 1 and 10. And we have to jump 1, 2, 3 places to the right, so times 10 to the power of 3, in order to end up with 8,025. So it'd be 8.025 times 10 to the 3. That's just converting ordinary numbers into standard form, which we've done in part 1 of the video. So, division up next. Without using a calculator, write the following in standard form. And division is very similar to multiplication, which apply the same ideas. So 9 divided by 3 this time, so grouping up the numbers first, would just be 3. And 10 to the 6 divided by 10 to the negative 2. Now remember, when we divide numbers in this way, we subtract the powers. When you divide indices, you subtract the powers. So you've got times 10 to the power of 6, take away minus 2. And if you subtract a negative number, you're essentially just adding it. So you're going to get 3 times 10 to the power of 6 plus 2, 8. And that would be your final answer there. Like I say, just to reiterate, if you haven't watched our video on indices, I would recommend you do so, because having a firm understanding of them is going to help you substantially for these questions. Lastly, 1b, 4 times 10 to the power of 7 divided by 8 times 10 to the power of 4. Using the exact same idea, 4 divided by 8 is going to be 0.5, okay, because that's basically half 4 divided by 8. So decimal is 0.5. And 10 to the 7 divided by 10 to the 4 would be 10 to the power of 7 take away 4. Remember, we subtract the powers when we divide. 7 take away 4 is 3. And again, we're going to do something a little bit clever here. Now, that number at the beginning, 0.5, is not between 1 and 10. As you can see, it's less than 1. So we're actually going to need to make that bigger. And the way in which we do that is we take one of the 10s we already have here and borrow it, and we put it in to this number here. So we actually merge it in the opposite direction to what we were doing earlier. So we take one of the 10s out of there and we merge it in with a 0.5. We times it by 0.5. And this is just going to give you, well, if you times 0.5 by 10, you get 5 times 10 to the power of, and remember we took one of those 10s out of there, so we now only have 2 10s up there. So you get 5 times 10 to the power of 2. Question number 2. So by using a calculator, write the following as an ordinary number. Again, if you have a calculator handy, you can just plug this in as you see it, and you'll get 2.25 times 10 to the negative 6. So it gives you it in standard form. To convert that into an ordinary number, we've done this in the previous video. You're just going to have to write down your number, so 2.25. And since it's to the power of negative 6, that decimal place is going to jump 6 places to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's where our decimal is. Fill in all the gaps with zeros. And we get 0.000000225. Bit of a mouthful, that one. Okay, addition and subtraction. So looking at 1a to start off with. 3 times 10 to the 5 plus 4 times 10 to the 5. So when the powers here and here, when the powers match up, they're both just 10 to the power of 5. We can add these quite easily just by thinking about it in the same way you would if it was 3x, so 3 lots of x, plus 4 lots of x, you would get 7 lots of x, so 7x. Well, in exactly the same way, if you have 3 lots of 10 to the 5, and you're adding 4 lots of 10 to the 5, you would have, so equals 7 lots of, so 7 times 10 to the power of 5. So when the powers match up, the problem here isn't actually too great. But when the powers don't match up, that's when you're going to have to do something a little bit clever. So looking at these here, you can see how the powers 4 and 3 are not matching up. So we basically have to make them match up. And the way I like to do this is I usually focus on the higher power first. So I'll focus on this 4 here because that's greater than 3. And I'm going to break that down and break it down to a 3 so that it's then going to match up. Now the way in which you do that is using a similar idea to what we were doing earlier. We take one of the 10s out of here and we merge it in with this number here. So we times that first number by 10. We borrow one of the 10s out of the 4 that we already have. We merge it in with 4.8, and that's going to give you 48 times 10 to the 3. So although that isn't in standard form as of yet, this is going to allow us to actually bring them together because we need to make it power of 3, so it's going to match up with the number on the right, which is also a power of 3. So you get 48 times 10 to the power of 3, take away 3.2 times 10 to the power of 3. And now the powers match up, we can take away the numbers at the front just as we did before. So 48 take away 3.2 is just going to be 44.8. So you get 44.8 times 10 to the 3. And this is not quite in standard form. And remember, part 1 of this question, it wants us to write all of these in standard form. All we're missing is the number at the beginning, again, is not between 1 and 10, so we're going to have to make it between 1 and 10. The way in which we do that is we divide that by 10, or we move that 10 along here and merge it in with the 3 that we already have. So we then have 4.48 if you divide that by 10, times 10 to the power of, and since we moved that 10 into the part on the right here with the existing 3 we already had, you would then have 4 10s up here. So we've just moved that 10 and merged it in with those 3 that we already had. And that would be your final answer. So last question, 1.6 times 10 to the negative 5 plus 2 times 10 to the negative 6. Now this one, again, we're going to do exactly the same technique. We're going to have to make the powers match up, but this time you can see how they're both negative. That's going to be a little bit more tricky to think about. And in actual fact, just the same as before, we're going to focus on the bigger power first. And if you think about it, negative 5 is actually bigger than negative 6. It's more positive than negative 6. Okay, it's quite a difficult concept to get your head around at the beginning. If you think about it in terms of like a number line, negative 5 is more towards the right than negative 6. So it's bigger than negative 6. And so we always focus on the bigger power first, the negative 5. And we're going to take one of the 10s out of there and merge it in with the 1.6. So what that's going to do, if we take one of the 10s out of there, that becomes 16 times 10 to the power of, and since we've taken away a 10 out of there, you're going to get minus 6. So we had minus 5 there before, we've taken one away, so that gets us to minus 6. And the whole point of this, as you can see now, is we're now going to be able to add that to the number in standard form on the right, because they're both to the power of negative 6 now. So 16 plus 2 would just be 18, lots of 10 to the negative 6. And again, you always got to double check that your number you end up with at the beginning is between 1 and 10. This one clearly isn't, so we're going to have to actually move that 10 and merge it in with the minus 6 up here. So adding 110 to that minus 6 up there, you then have minus 5. So you have 1.8, because we're dividing that 10 out of there, and merging it with the minus 6 up here. So basically adding another 10 in here to have minus 5. And that would be your final answer. So we've managed to cover all the types of operations, and that's everything we wanted to get done today. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care. Thanks again for watching. For more great resources to help build your confidence and ace your exams, feel free to head over to www.katala.co.uk, where you can sign up for free today. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or suggestions, just comment down below. Thank you.